As the war rages on in Ukraine, there are fresh concerns around the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in particular. A nuclear plant caught in the middle of the battle, where shells continue to rain around it amid fears of a nuclear catastrophe now. This plant, which is Europe's largest atomic facility, has been occupied by Russian forces since early March. Although the plant is under Russian control and curiously the staff there are still Ukrainians, one can only imagine how tense could the situation be inside the facility. Kyiv and Moscow continue to blame each other for the constant shelling around the power plant. Apart from the shelling, there is a new headache. Kyiv says that the 2 staff members at the facility have been killed by the Russians, while several other staff members were detained and tortured. However, the reality is not known yet due to the lack of independent verification. Moreover, fresh shelling was carried out around the plant on Friday, due to which blackout of the Ukrainian city of Enerhodar. The IAEA, which is the UN's atomic watchdog, has raised its concerns about the security situation at the nuclear power plant. The IAEA says that a vital off-site electricity supply to the plant has been destroyed, and there is little likelihood that a reliable supply will be re-established.
Shelling has caused a complete blackout in Enerhodar and compromised the safety operation of the nearby Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. There is now a low chance that reliable off-site power can be restored. The shelling is putting in danger operators and their families, making it difficult to adequately staff the plant. Together, this has significantly increased the risk of a nuclear accident.
Ukraine now says that it may have to shut down the last operating reactor which supplies power to the nuclear power plant, including to the cooling systems for the plant's nuclear fuel. Though the nuclear plant is capable of producing huge amount of electricity, but the facility also needs power from the same electricity grid it feeds. The electricity is critical as it is used to run the various parts of the plant, including its safety and cooling systems. Now remember, we are talking about a facility which is harnessing the most powerful mode of energy, and also the most dangerous, because an incident can trigger a chain reaction which can lead to a meltdown of reactors and cause a catastrophe. These materials can remain radioactive and dangerous to human health for thousands of years, and if critical equipment of the nuclear power plant is damaged, experts will have warned that it could trigger extensive radiation pollution, which is basically the release of radioactive substances into the environment. And this is not something which will impact only Ukraine. The radiation pollution could reach up to Russia, Europe, and even to the Middle East. The world got a glimpse in Chernobyl, which incidentally is in present-day Ukraine. In the year 1986, a meltdown and explosions ruptured the reactor core and destroyed the reactor building. The accident caused airborne radioactive contaminants, which spread onto other parts of the erstwhile USSR and parts of Europe. The next fearsome incident was in Japan. In the year 2011, here the cause was a massive earthquake. It was the most powerful earthquake ever recorded in Japan. The tremors triggered a powerful tsunami with the 13 to 14 meter high waves crashing into the nuclear power plant, which led to a series of events. The resultant loss of reactor core cooling led to 3 nuclear meltdowns, 3 hydrogen explosions, and the release of radioactive contamination. Coming back to Ukraine, the need of the hour is to create an immediate nuclear safety zone. Officials from the International Atomic Energy Agency had recently visited Zaporizhzhia. What they saw has been penned down in a nearly 50-page report. IAEA inspectors say that they found Russian troops at the plant. There were also equipment and Russian military vehicles. Ukraine has been alleging that Russia is storing weapons at the plant and using it as a base to launch attacks on Ukrainian territory. The UN nuclear watchdog found a turbine lubrication oil tank, and it was found to be damaged. So were roofs of various buildings. Also, a building housing fresh nuclear fuel and another housing nuclear fuel. Although everyone from Brussels to Washington to Kyiv have been raising an alarm, there is unanimity that the area near the nuclear power plant should be demilitarized, something which in principle both Moscow and Kyiv have agreed to in public statements, but apparently both continue to wrangle on and is in the process endangering this crucial facility. Now, to analyze this situation and the ramifications further, let me introduce my guests on this broadcast. Joining us now is Andreas Umlund from Berlin, who is an analyst at the Stockholm Center for Eastern European Studies. Also joining me is Dr. Paul Dorfman, who is an associate fellow at the University of Sussex. I welcome you both on this broadcast. Paul, I'd like to start with you. The IAEA says that a vital off-site electricity supply to the plant has been destroyed, and there is little likelihood that a reliable supply will be re-established. How precarious is the situation on site right now?
It's hugely precarious. Power is needed to cool the reactor and, critically, the spent fuel ponds. What this means is now the backup diesel generators are doing all the work, so it is for radiation protection professionals, it is a hugely worrying time for the people of Ukraine, for the people of Central Europe, for the people of Russia, and maybe, as you said, the people of the Middle East.
Right, just a follow-up to that. You're saying that this is a very precarious situation. The ramifications, the radiation pollution threat could be felt as far as the Middle East. Give us a sense of that.
Once the plume goes up, it depends on the wind and the wind patterns and the weather patterns, what happens. But to step back just a moment from all of this, the thing that has really caught my attention is the fact that we're seeing for the first time the weaponization of civil nuclear. It's not something that really hasn't been thought about. IAEA, unfortunately, have never really regulated or discussed this. And what does this mean for nuclear? What does this mean for nuclear in Europe? What does this mean for nuclear elsewhere? And in terms of what you were talking about earlier, in terms of your news discourse, now that Pakistan has been flooded, right, what does that mean for Pakistani nuclear infrastructure?
Right. That raises some important questions, definitely, Paul. Coming to you, Andreas, give us a sense of the magnitude of this crisis in your view. The nuclear plant is caught in the middle of the battle. Russia and Ukraine continue to trade bombs.
Well, I think one has to say here clearly that this is simply a new form of Russian hybrid warfare, where Russia has turned the largest European nuclear power plant into what we could say an equivalent of a neutron bomb, and is now basically threatening both Ukraine and the European Union with a catastrophe that is, of course, reminiscent of the Chernobyl disaster of 1986. And what Russia wants here is some sort of ceasefire that would acknowledge Russia's territorial gains in Ukraine. I think that is what is eventually standing behind that. And the main threat here is, of course, for the Ukrainians. If you look at the map, Zaporizhia is hundreds of kilometers away from the Russian-Ukrainian border, deep into southern Ukraine, excuse me. And we shouldn't be mixing up here the different roles that Ukraine and Russia play in this
absolutely
in this situation.
Right, Paul. Coming back to you, I want to again delve into the technicalities to explain to our viewers the magnitude of the situation. Ukraine now says that it may have to shut down the last operating reactor, which supplies power to the nuclear power plant. What could be the ramifications of this?
The ramifications are absolutely clear. All nuclear power plant, whether scrammed, whether shut down, and certainly the high-level radiation spent fuel ponds need cooling. Okay, if they don't get cooling, then you're going to have a very, very real problem. Now, the cooling takes power. Now, if the electricity power is shut down, which it seems is, either has happened or will remain to be happened, what you're now depending on are backup diesel generators, which is hugely, hugely problematic. Now, if there is a real problem with the spent fuel pond cooling, you could see something really, really bad happening.
Right. Well explained, Paul. Andreas, coming back to you, just wrapping up our discussion here. We are talking about a facility which is harnessing the most powerful mode of energy. It has become a flashpoint in this war now. Where is this war headed, in your view?
I think the escalation around the Zaporizhia power plant has a lot to do with the unsuccessful conventional warfare that Russia has been conducting so far. And it seems that the Russian leadership is simply now looking for unconventional forms of warfare. And one of these instruments is apparently this nuclear power plant. And the sort of discussion that we are now conducting, I think, is part of this unconventional warfare. I think it's to scare people in Ukraine, in Berlin, in Warsaw, in Brussels, and to gain something politically from that.
Andreas, thank you so much for all those insights, and thank you to Paul as well. Thank you to both my guests for joining me on this broadcast with the latest.
Thank you.
WION World is One is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.